So we're running I guess you could call it a vidcast right now. And I know that there's a number of people who ask us from time to time, what software are you using, what mics are you using, how'd you get started, that kind of thing. And after we were talking with you, Shaun, and knowing what you're doing now, figured this would be a good time to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys wanted to talk about it. I thought we would end up talking a little bit about, marketing and maybe some comparisons to B2C and B2B. And maybe we'll have a little bit of that dialogue as well. But yeah, on the podcasting, you guys are, I think, very familiar with the topic, and there's a lot of different platforms. And sometimes people will put together shows. Like this is more of a show to me than a podcast. But I got interested in it a long time ago. During COVID, I decided, okay, well, I've got a little more time on my hands, so let me figure it out. And that's when I started to do research. But I really didn't actually put together or launch my first episode until March of 2020 was the first episode I did of What's Going On with Shaun, which again was just kind of my own exercising my ability to figure out, if I could do it.
Beginning of COVID.
Yeah. Yep. So What's Going On with Shaun was kind of my idea of, I want to be able to have conversations with people where everyone's kind of locked down. I think Aaron Bickert was my first guest.
That's a good start.
And I just kind of did a smattering of old friends, industry friends, and I think the tagline still for What's Going On with Shaun, which still exists, I just don't put as much time into episodes there because it's just other things that unlocked from all of that over the last few years. But What's Going On with Shaun says, it's a podcast grounded in marketing, but with an appetite for talking about things that make life worth living. And that's just that's my personality, because of course I love to talk about all the marketing stuff, but some people like to go beyond that. Some people like to get outside of our vertical and what I call not emotive. And then all of a sudden you're having dialogue about things that maybe were things going on in the world. I love to talk about music with people. I'm a real big music guy, both playing it, listening to it. So that was the inspiration for really kind of figuring out. I wanted to reconnect with people. And then I learned a lot about the whole kind of podcasting thing. And now I've kind of basically turned it into the business that I operate now, but with a little bit of a twist.
I can tell you have a nice mic.
Mm-hmm. You know what's funny about microphones? Well, it's not funny. It might be interesting to people. You can spend thousands of dollars on a microphone, as you guys know. You can also spend $50 and it'll sound about 250 times better than, just using your AirPods or, the microphone that might be built into your webcam. We get that question a lot from people when they're saying, well, what kind of camera should I use, or what kind of webcam? We oftentimes just tell people, get a 1080p or one that will be as good as 4K. Logitech Brio. That's the camera I'm using right now, is a Logitech Brio. I think you can buy it for $150.
Is that what I'm using?
Yeah.
Yep. But when it comes to microphones, the one that I'm using right now, I think when I first bought it, when it came onto the market, it was less than $100. You can buy it now, I think, for $60 or $70. And yet there are some people, and I think it's just in our industry, it seems there are a lot of people drowning in Lake Me. And so the vanity piece of, if that's kind of who you are, great. But it'll typically mean that it's easy to peg that you're one of those people because you'll buy the $2,000 microphone when you only needed a $200 microphone. So I just try to assess, what are you trying to... Yeah. Yeah, you don't need the Rogan setup, at least not for the way that we advocate podcasting. There's a difference between obviously entertainment podcasts and using it as a marketing tool, right? There's a big difference. Most companies no company is going to amass a listening audience and or viewing audience if you're also video podcasting. They're not going to amass an audience like Smartless or Joe Rogan Experience or really all the top podcasts that are meant to be informational. But that doesn't mean that there isn't tremendous value in podcasting, which is we'll talk about all that kind of stuff. So
There's
yeah.
there's some good successful automotive ones. Like Car Dealership Guy is doing a great one.
Yeah.
His internet-based one is good. Brian Pash's was decent for a little while there. I'm not sure he's doing it so much anymore. Or it's not
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah, that, and there are different schools of thought on consistency or frequency. Like, should you be? And I always try to tell people, one, just get your head around the idea of what a wellspring it becomes for content creation, which I know we'll explore that a little bit in our conversation today. But I also want people not to try to bite off more than they can chew. Brian is a great example of somebody he has so many things going on managing his kind of business portfolio that I can only imagine that it's very difficult now to find time for the podcast, and then also just to align it and prioritize it among all the other parts of his business that he operates, live events, and there's just a lot to manage. So I always want people to understand the frequency, how often you're going to record episodes. It is important, but you don't want to start by thinking we need a weekly show, right? You can't all of a sudden we're going to do what Alex and Jeff are doing. We're going to have a weekly show. You guys know better than most people in the industry that it takes time to prepare for that. Especially if you're doing interview style shows like this, a lot of the automotive podcasts that have been out for a long time are primarily interview shows. That's where you probably are going to derive the most value for a target audience. But yeah, it certainly is one thing I tell people. Just make sure that you're seeing the value of it and the purpose of podcasting before you start to think you're going to easily pull it off in terms of once a week. If you can start off with once a month, that's where I usually tell people start with once a month and then figure out how you build it into your work schedule, and more frequency comes later. Yeah.
To your point there, Jeff, it took us a long time to really figure out the formula that worked for us. It's not the formula, but we usually take a couple of days every quarter, depending on what kind of interest and whatnot, and we try to schedule out as far as we can that time. And there's sponsored shows and things like that do help out. That's probably the hardest part is the scheduling. I would say that's
getting everybody on board.
Yeah, because
we've been pretty lucky.
And then people last minute have to bail. That
happens
usually. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're able to pull someone in last minute. There've been some good people for helping out on that in that regard. Like Drew Ament, for example, he says, keep me on the sideline, call me at the last minute if you ever need. And then there's also the promotional pieces of it. So an email, and then there's social posts. And we've been fortunate to find a software that allows the simulcasting and also the scheduling across LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. But we didn't have that for a long time. We had to
what do we use?
We use Ecamm now.
Ecamm. Yeah, because they do the broadcasting to all the different places.
Yeah, we're on it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we used Zoom for a long time. That had and that was very expensive because you had to pay a fee on top of your regular Zoom licenses. And we never really used that feature where with the webinar in Zoom, you can host 200 people or something like that.
Yeah. And when you're doing the live webinar, that it's a little bit of a different dynamic because the podcasting, especially the video capture podcasting platforms that have risen up over the last few years, I don't know if there's one that actually that's a true for podcasting versus webinar, that it would allow 200 seats. They're usually capped at a much smaller number than that. But when I first started the What's Going On with Shaun podcasting, which was my kind of learning area, well, how are people? You guys know this. You have to figure out, like, well, how do we handle distribution? Like, how do you get your podcast into Apple? How do you get your podcast into Spotify? And so that was one of my first questions, beyond just, well, what kind of gear do I need? But the distribution. And I used Zoom in the first, I don't know how many episodes. I think I did almost 25 in 2020 when I started What's Going On with Shaun. I think I did 24 or 25 episodes. And it nearly killed me to do that many episodes. It was fun to do, but that was a really particularly awful year in my life. And so I used it also as a thing to just take my mind off of all of the tremendous sadness that I was experiencing. That was the year I lost my mom. So it was complicated for a lot of reasons, but Zoom was the easiest thing because so many people were familiar with it from being on web calls, typically regarding their employment. And my research, though, took me to other places. I started using, and I still use this Descript, a little bit. Riverside is another popular platform. We use Riverside still a lot. And all of them are still growing because most of them all have AI components built in. So Descript, Riverside, Transistor, all of them have at least some measure of AI built in, which will will cut down the amount of time that you have to spend in post audio editing, post video editing, depending on the type of show you have. So, Riverside, for example, that's one of the things that first caught my attention with them is, regardless of the camera and the microphone that your guests have or you yourself have, it will use its AI to optimize the best quality in terms of look from the camera and the sound from the microphone. And then you have distribution platforms like Transistor and Buzzsprout, both of whom, actually, I don't know if Transistor has this now, but Buzzsprout, for example, started adding things like magic mastering. So instead of having to go and take your stuff and put it into Adobe Audition, or if you don't want to pay for that and you use Audacity or something like that, most people aren't audio engineers either. So the fact that these tools have made all of that even easier, you can come out with a very great looking, and great sounding product, just because the technology has advanced so far. And I know a lot of people still use Zoom, but I think Zoom probably missed out on that opportunity to stay really prolific in that space because they serve a much bigger audience. It's not just that podcast audience. Theirs is, of course, much, much bigger.
Yep. The other thing, so if you're doing a video one, and you were mentioning the camera and the mic at the beginning, I've seen some people come on and might have missed that part, where you don't have to spend a ton of money on the camera or the mic. Like you said, you're using a webcam. I think all three of us are actually. You both are using the Logitech Brio. I've got a Lucid, I think. It was a little Kickstarter thing.
Yeah.
And then mics. So at the office, I used the same one as Jeff. We went in on some nicer, like Elvis mics, because they were.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Jeff. You can move yours into the frame.
Get it in there or not?
Hang up. These were our big mics, but guess you can't see it. But just imagine Elvis Presley. That's
or Wayne Newton with the golden microphone.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here at the house, I've got just a boom mic that sits up out of the frame, and it just picks up certain areas. So one of the things, well, first off, there's two mic connections. So you've got USB. That's probably the easiest to plug right into a computer.
Yeah.
And you've got the XLR, which is your analog audio. It's a more controllable signal, but in order to have that, you need to have an analog or a piece of hardware that allows you to change the boost, and you can control, like, how people how that comes, that sound, that
Yep.
noise can sound annoying in a microphone, and you can control it with hardware, tone that back. Um, there's mutes. There's all kind. You can get crazy with it. And so knowing there's those, but again, you can just get yourself a USB mic and plug it right into your computer and be good to go with that. And then if you're doing a video one, the biggest thing that you should invest in is lighting, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a crappy webcam and put some good lights on it, and all of a sudden it looks like a DSLR camera.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Shaun, you're the perfect example right now.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a couple of things that I think are important. If you're going to go XLR, you're going to have an audio interface. Some people will use an audio interface even if they're doing USB stuff, but usually XLR means audio interface. You can't see it, but on my desk, just like kind of right down there, I actually have a small 4-channel mixer that has an audio interface built into it, but then you have to download a driver for your computer for that. And so once you get into the technicalities of being able to record like this, even if you're not going to use it for a podcast, you don't have to. But it also starts to get into the gamer environment and live streaming. And are you going to go, StreamYard, OBS, all these other things? And it can get a little confusing for people that are not technically savvy, especially around audio engineered stuff. I'm just kind of fortunate that I've been a music nerd for so long and been in bands, and so I was already very familiar with XLR inputs for not just microphones, but speakers. And I started playing live music during the pandemic, so I played a little music duo. That was like my lifeline to sanity over the past handful of years. And we have a very small specific PA, but lots of XLR inputs. So for people that aren't familiar with that world, it can be really daunting. But I'm always a big fan of the simplicity. Simplify all those things so they don't become the roadblocks that keep you from doing it. But yeah.
Any thoughts on the lighting?
Oh yeah, you are. That's right. I have lighting behind me, as you can see on the wall. I created an environment in my office that was specifically like, well, I want to improve any of the content we're going to shoot that features me. And so I can change the color of those lights. They're just LEDs. They're all basically, sitting on the floor. But I can change the color, the tone. If you're not familiar with having a key light or having a hair light, which is really meant to be pointed at the back of your head from behind you, and then it kind of brings a halo effect. It doesn't take really much more than a little bit of research on YouTube. And just like everything, like remember back in the day when SEO was first on people were talking about it, you could spend about 24 to 48 hours of research, and next thing you know, you were the foremost SEO expert in whatever vertical you are in. There's a lot of similarities to that now. Like but we've been living in instant gratification world for a long time. And if you're wanting instant gratification on becoming a lot more knowledgeable on having a basic lighting setup for your web calls, just go to YouTube, spend a little time there, and then all of a sudden you'll know the things that we're talking about. But I have right in this setup right now, I have it's kind of a bar light right in front of me above 2 monitors that I literally use as a monitor light flat when I'm not doing this. And I literally turn it up when I'm going to be on calls like this. And then I have another key light here, or the one that has a little bit of a soft filter to it that comes from this side. If I wanted to darken the room more to get that shadow effect on one side of your face, I have no lighting that comes from here, but I have a light colored wall on this side, and it reflects. So that's why you get all of those things. You can learn pretty quickly if you want a cool looking setup. Having a backlight and then playing with how bright that light is, and also the colors that you choose. Like the one behind me right now is like an orangey yellow color, and it makes this look the way that I want it to. But if you choose like a blue color or magenta, you also then might have to tweak the lights that are in front of you or to the side of you, because it'll wash you out or it'll make you look. And I have video content of myself that look absolutely shitty because I either didn't know that stuff or didn't have enough time to put all the lights on the way I wanted, and it'll make you look like you're jaundice, or you're, coming down with a cold or something. And it could just be that your lighting isn't quite on point. And so I would definitely tell people, there's a couple of like favorite people that I like on YouTube for that. But like anything, like choosing your microphones and your cameras, find the people that really speak to you and you like the way they deliver the content, because you won't have a hard time finding, how do I do a basic lighting setup for web calls? Or as a vlogger, that sometimes is a helpful keyword, what people are doing in vlog setups. And you'll be off to the races.
Stream.
Easy.
I call it.
Yeah. So much of that. I have a 25-year-old son who likes to do the game streaming stuff. I'm Atari 2600. So,
pinball, man.
Yeah. Anybody want to play some combat? I've got my joystick ready to go. That's me.
Hey, I love combat.
Before we part the lighting one, I would say if you were looking to get into this, that's where I put my biggest dollar into. I went with Elgato, I think. Just the real seamless system. So we've got two lights on either side of the dual monitors over here. But the nice part is there's this. I'm probably not going to be able to get it in the frame, but they have a thing called a Stream Deck, and you can program the buttons here and control your lights right from there. And so it's nice because I can quickly just change the light with the press of a button. So now this is 10% and then 100%, and it changes quick. But the 10% is what I run when I'm not being on camera. So it's just some extra light in the room. And then the stream.
Yeah, I have an Elgato base cam.
Yeah. I can mute my mic real fast. There's different themes and things you can program in, like all the tools or websites that you might visit on a regular basis. Like, and then I think let's see if this still works.
Soundboard.
Yeah, I got a soundboard, but it's not hooked up to Ecamm now. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you can play all the different tunes and things during the thing. Control the scenes. Yeah.
The Elgato Stream Deck, I think you're right. That is what it's called. That's a little device with a bunch of little buttons on it that illuminate. And you're right. You can program that to do all the things that are probably most, the things that you do most frequently in terms of your media setup. And Elgato makes a bunch of cool products. They were, you guys probably remember this, but during the pandemic, there was a bit of a run on webcams. And so, I want to get a Logitech anything. Well, too bad, because all you can get are these terrible, crappy ones on Amazon that are made, by, who know. Well, I'll spare people that might think I'm getting too political, but they were junk cameras, were pretty much all you could get, and nobody was really happy with them. And then, of course, Elgato was like, hey, well, you can use your iPhone or your smartphone, download this app. And I did that for a while because I don't remember what iPhone I was using it on, but Elgato's app to basically turn your iPhone into your webcam for calls just like this. It was 10 times better even than the old Logitech that I was using at the time. So
it's built into the iOS now. When you use it, in fact, the camera is too detailed. It's like you're looking.
Or like old guys, like, I don't want.
Yeah, you're seeing every pore, everything.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't turn on the CoverGirl filter.
Oh, maybe
soften it all up.
I didn't realize that was the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I have an Elgato Facecam Pro that is over here. I use for kind of different stuff. Sometimes when I'm doing music stuff. Elgato does have some cool products for sure. And like you said, you're not breaking the bank. I agree with you. I think investing some money in lighting, again, depending on what you're going to do with podcasting or subject matter expertise capture,
Oh, there you
that's
go.
a really big important component to what we're doing with the hired guns agency. Is even if you don't want to do a podcast, a video interview is exactly what you should be doing. And you don't have to invest a lot, but if you're going to do that and you want to look the best that you can, lighting will be important. And you can learn very quickly through YouTube. You can also make some purchase decisions there, because there are a lot of people that will walk you through, from budget lighting, budget microphones, budget cameras, all the way up to the really high end stuff. And and I use a little bit of all of that. You will find out really quickly. You guys know this because you've obviously been doing a show like this for so long. But if the lighting that's in front of you isn't some place where you spend a lot of time, it will force you to spend a lot of time there, because you'll be trying to get harsh tones removed. You'll be trying to figure out, well, how does soft lighting work? Do I need a soft box? Do I need one that costs $1,200 and it has a mesh screen over it? And how close do I want a 45-degree angle? How close to my face? And you'll see a lot of people, especially really talented photographers that also got into videography. One, they usually will walk you through in detail the very best gear, but they also will have setups that I usually try to tell people, just make sure you are not comparing yourself directly to somebody that has been doing this for
this.
yeah. You don't have to do that. For me, the bigger part of all of this, when it's podcasting or video interviews, it's really more of preparing for what you're going to capture in the first place, because the magic and the value is really in the captured content. It's a huge unlock, especially for B2B companies. But I'm sure there are some applications on the B2C side as well. I don't do a whole lot of advocacy of like, hey, dealers, like car dealers, you should get into podcasting. Although if your brand and your personality and your market is big enough, there are certainly some use cases that could be very interesting. But on the B2B side, companies that are serving various niches within our industry, it's still a huge miss. You do see a lot of people that will guest on a lot of the various I mean, very similar to, you guys invited me to come and spend time with the Dealer Refresh audience today. This isn't my audience. There are similarities, right? It's the car business. But you guys have a trusted legacy brand that's nearly 20 years old, right? Which is amazing and extremely valuable. But I have to go into an event like this. I would tell other people, but when you're going to join someone else's audience and spend a little time there, be inspired by the fact that you could also be doing this on a little tour of other podcasts where you'll get some notoriety. But why are you not doing that on your own? Why are you not building your own, chasing your own specific audience? Because here's an example. Dealer Refresh and Refresh Friday can capture the whole industry, right? They might not be interested today to learn like, why are you guys talking about podcasting, and get to the points that are going to be really valuable, or give me a takeaway, or why the hell are you fucking talking about podcasting? Am I allowed to say the F word? Sorry.
Oh yes.
Sure.
One. How many do I get per episode? Anyway, so there's some people that may not be interested in that. Some people are like, I wish you guys were just talking about EVs again, because we haven't had enough of that. Like, it's not on the front page of automotive news enough. So, but we have niches within this industry that get very, very specific, meaning they sell a product or a service that only 50% of all of the franchise dealers in the whole North America are really an ideal potential client for. And so you have to think, well, if I'm one of those companies, what content am I making, right, that speaks just to my part of the audience, that's my target, marketing jargon of your ICP or your ideal customer profile. It may not be the whole industry. In most cases, depending on whatever it is you sell, it's not the entire automotive industry. Yet, most companies are, well, why would we ever do a podcast? They would ask that question because they're marketing the same way they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and they don't see the value. I get it.
And I
But
assume this is what you're doing with Hire Guns Agency.
yeah, it's exactly what we're doing. I won't make that a whole pitch, but we spent about 18 months with just a couple of businesses, um, basically taking the things that really kind of sparked my interest in putting what's going on with Shaun up in 2020. That was the unlock to and then I started to find other people online far outside of automotive where I'm like, this is a thing. Oh, okay, I get it. And then I realized, well, that's a perfect place to advocate for businesses to capture the thought leadership content from the smartest people in their companies. And right now, that's still a really big miss. And I know there's skeptics to it, but all you got to do is spend a few minutes on LinkedIn trying to scroll through the content that people are in our industry, in the automotive industry, are trying to post. And it's mostly scattershot, well, hopefully, but it's a lot of the same stuff. People do a lot of the same types of marketing because it's a lot of the same marketing leadership in our industry it's the same people that have been doing it. And so their strategies and tactics and their go-to marketing, their GTM is what they've been doing for a long time. But it's all absent of getting the CEO or the CTO or whoever is really the visionary who has so much to share that the target audience they want to hear about, that needs to be insightful and interesting, educates the audience. There's not nearly enough of that. It's we're better, use us because we can tell you how crappy your vendors are, or like whatever that. Yes, there are lots of crappy vendors out there, but your target audience doesn't really want to hear that as much as they want to hear, we do this to solve this pain point in dealers. And this is how it works. Oh, by the way. And oh, you're feeling this problem and you've had it for the last 5 years because COVID brought some new things into your business. Well, we resolve some of these problems and solve them by doing these things. And if you're interested in that, sure, you can go deeper with us. But there needs to be more of that content where you're really truly helping somebody. And then there also has to be the patience to know that the market isn't in market when you're trying to outbound hardcore sell to them, and there's no intent at all in your audience, maybe 2%. But you're marketing in a way that you think that they're going to like, well, you should be responding to this and take a demo right now. Like, you're the one that crashed my party and told me I should take a demo right now, and I'm just trying to enjoy a cocktail with friends. So if you use that same analogy and say, well, you maybe are someone that they didn't plan on seeing at the party or they've never met, but you're interesting and you share information that they remember you. That's what every business should be doing, is make content for your audience that will make them remember you, like you, trust you. Because what ends up happening is people see your content over and over and over. And if it's good content, it's not just loading up the internet with garbage because there's already enough of that. But if it's good content, then they remember you when the moment strikes that they're like, we need a solution for this, or I need more information about this. If you were the one that occupied the space in their mind of thought leadership around whatever your category is, and you own it and you're likable and you're not a dipshit, you're going to win. And then what happens then? You become the dominant brand in your category, and we don't have to think too hard. I won't name names, but I know that the three of us could think of people that in some way, shape, or form made their brand the de facto, everybody knew of it. They were approachable. They shared a lot of content that was helpful to their target audience, and they were massively successful. They built their companies to the point that they wanted them to grow, and then they sold them, and they were, happy as, a pig in slop. Well, it's not that difficult. In fact, it's easier to do that today than ever, and it's not particularly expensive either. So that's why I think it's great that you guys wanted to talk about this, because people definitely need to know you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on all of the setup, all of the software, all of the lighting, all of the you can You can literally spend a few $100s and turn out a really great product that's going to be helpful to your business.
There's a question from the audience on that very. So Brent asks, what budget should companies set for this kind of content? Per subject matter expert or just one figurehead?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way we do that, we have pricing set. I mean, you can see it actually on our website. We just post it on there so that people don't really have to ask deep questions. But we don't charge per subject matter expert. So if your company has 2 or 3 people who own their own area, for us, it's just one price. It's based on how many hours or how many episodes we're going to record in a given month for us. So if you have 3 subject matter experts and one's going this month and one's going the next month, or you decide you want to do 2 in 1 month, it's always based on how many episodes we're going to. So yeah, as far as the that's how the pricing goes. So was there a second part of that question that Brent had?
No, what kind of budgets though should companies really be thinking about here? Because
Anywhere, I can't speak for other people
on some of it.
Yeah, I'm not going to name specific names. I know there are people that do podcasting in our industry that are looking for sponsors. So they want to come to a company and say, hey, for $5,000, we'll put your logo on this episode. Maybe it's relevant to what your company does. Maybe it's not, but you trust my brand because I built a person. I'm not saying me specifically. I didn't do this with what's going on with Shaun. I thought about it, years ago, and I was like, I just didn't think there was enough value to it, to be honest with you. And I'm not, although some people might think I am, I'm not so drowning in Lake Me that I thought, oh, I'm going to make this because of my own personal brand. I'm going to bring all that. And not that there's anything wrong with that. For those of you that might see this content or you're like, hell, you're talking about me. Maybe I am, but that's fine if it works for you. But if you're a company considering drafting off of or renting another audience, especially if it's a personal brand, great. There's some things that you need to ask about in terms of the value. So pricing wise, you could have somebody say, well, we've built this podcast and it's going to be $5,000 a month if you want to be a sponsor. And they, I'm sure, have their service description of what you get for that sponsorship. I don't think it's particularly a whole lot of value for the big dollars like that. That's not something that I recommend. For us, it's simple. You can see on our website, for people that don't want to do a full podcast and they want to do what we call SME capture, which is I want your subject matter expertise captured because that's how we make great content from it. We have a package, I think at the low end is like $1,750 a month, but that's us putting the stuff into distribution. You send us a raw file, we cut up shorts for you, we give you written assets, something that isn't all ChatGPT written. Because it's inspired by, hey, your CEO sat down with us for 30 or 60 minutes, or we sit down together, put that together, we brief. No one comes in, by the way, not prepared to have these conversations. They shine like the rock stars they are because you're basically just talking about the things they're already so comfortable with. But yeah, so I think the top package, this is just us, I can't speak for everybody else. Top thing that we sell is somewhere around $3,500 or $3,700. And in that, you get hosting, full distribution to every place you can listen. You get a certain number of video assets cut up that you can use. Obviously, that's part of the point of this. Written assets, blog article, email article, social post copy to complement all of the other things that now you're going to use. That's what we found. Not trying to make this a sales pitch. What I found was there are so many companies that offer amazing products and services that probably sit there and say, why doesn't anybody know who we are? Like nobody even knows we exist and we have awesome stuff. And some companies literally never made it. They literally shut their doors because nobody ever knew who they were. But I guarantee you, if they did anything in marketing, it certainly wasn't, well, let's get your subject matter expertise on camera, captured so that we can actually turn that into the things that your audience really cares about. Instead, all of the go-to-marketing strategies in not just automotive, but for the last 15 years have been primarily built on segmenting the sales and marketing roles into specialists, right? So all you know how to do is set up Google Ads. Okay, great. Give them a Pat McAfee clap. That's fantastic. But what we really needed to do is we needed to get more and have I feel really lucky because I know how to do so many things and I've been it as a marketer, but also I was a salesperson for years. And so I love knowing from the customer and learning from the customer. But that said, pricing wise, I think if you have a budget that's certainly less than $5,000 a month, you can make a lot of content if you know what you're doing that will be extremely effective for your brand. And I mean, it's just not a place where you have to spend nearly as much money as you would if you were going to go chase a Google Ads campaign, which is going to burn through, and you won't get basic in B2B. I would basically
Well,
say if you're spending anything B2B marketing in Google, you probably should chop it by about 80%.
so two things based on your response to that question there, Shaun. Not about the dollars, but in light of uh, things that we were talking about earlier in the show and whatnot. We were talking about from Dealer Refresh's perspective, the hardest part is the logistics. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, actually sitting on the camera and everything afterward it sort of happens. It flows. It's organic at that point. It's the content's been created, but getting to the point where you're actually creating the content is the hardest part in getting all of that together. I think that's where the value in hiring an expert really comes into play.
Yeah.
Well,
That's my
that, and
Yeah.
then
And if,
once you do have all that great content, where are you going to utilize that content? You got to make sure it's getting in front of the right people at the right time.
well, and
yeah, there's
the second
content creation and then there's distribution, right? Yeah. Where's it going to go?
Yeah.
let me feed you another one here, Shaun. And based on what Jeff's saying, we are seeing a shift in Google and Facebook, especially right now. And it shifted at COVID as well. So these channels that people have used, say in the car business, if you're a vendor, your automotive newses, your CDNs, your dealer refreshes, your whatever, these things ebb and flow. For they can have down quarters of viewership for whatever reasons or whatever it might be. But even again, Facebook and Google, for speaking on the vendor side, um, Google likes to, if you're doing certain types of paid search advertising, they like to stick their own keywords in on you. And you can, if you're not paying attention to it, very quickly your phone's ringing with people who have nothing to do with the car business whatsoever, just because Google went nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I think Facebook even, because that's a pay to play place now. You're not going to get any eyeballs if you don't boost your posts. So you got to pay to boost your posts, and you also have to make sure they're being boosted to the right audience. And you can't, like, targeting on Facebook's impossible. Ever since the
Yeah.
Cambridge
Hmm.
stuff, they have closed that door down. So
Mm-hmm.
the people liking your posts after you boost them and stuff like that, I like to go in and look at them and be like, what percentage of these people do I know are in the car business?
That's a very important thing to do, and I would tell people to pay attention to that on LinkedIn as well. There's a myth that LinkedIn is the best place if you're selling to dealers, to car dealers, and it's a small percentage. I don't know what it is. I don't know that we would ever know for sure, but um, any of us can tell that there's not nearly the percentage of actual dealers spending hours in LinkedIn as there are service providers and vendors that spend a lot of time. Doesn't mean there aren't any folks on the retail side, because there are, but you have to know that, and you have to pay attention to when to what you're saying, Jeff, is where you're going to distribute all of your content. If you don't already know your audience so well, which for some companies could be that your audience research, your target market research would have already told you that most of your audience spends its time in Instagram and Facebook and a little less so in LinkedIn. And then you're going to prioritize accordingly. But not everyone knows that to start. So then where do you start? Well, you start by actually putting your content in all of those places and then paying attention to what's happening on what people would refer to as dark social, which is pretty much not trackable. There's not. I've researched and experimented with 3 different tools that say they can track it. None of them really can. GA4 may be opening the door to a little bit better of that, but let me just back up on that. So dark social is your company posts something on LinkedIn, and somebody jumps into the comments and they don't make a comment, but they share it with a friend, right? That you're not tracking that. Or they grab the article out of LinkedIn and they copy the link and they message it to or text it to a friend. There's no model that tracks all of that accurately. So there's a lot of things that happen within, especially for B2B companies. So if you're B2B and you're selling products or services to dealers, you really want to pay attention to the type of content you create and then what happens in what would be considered dark social, because most businesses are not capturing self-reported attribution at all, and that's a really big key. And let me 2 more things. So in case people are like, well, I don't understand dark social, well, you can look it up if you don't understand the couple examples that I gave. But on self-reported attribution, if you, on your primary forms of your company's site, add to your form, one, just make sure that it's not a particularly restrictive form, but add a question that says, how did you hear about us? And if you want to have a drop down and they can choose Google or a friend or whatever, that's fine. But better yet, an open field that they could actually type something in. The more you start to do a strategy like, hey, our content's going to build up our brand and now people are going to become more familiar with us, the more you're going to want to have a capture methodology like that for self-reported attribution, because you'll find that people say, well, I saw your content, da 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 da, or such and such CEO can't stop saying great things about you. And we don't do a really good job of that in automotive, of capturing that other part. And it's really, especially if you own your category and people are really familiar with your subject matter experts, you want to know that. You want to know that. And you have to have some way of capturing it. Yeah.
You just got thinking about adding a form or adding to our forms website. Little drop down. How'd you hear about us? I'm going to put walk in and drive by.
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually, for our own site, we're kind of going back through all of that right now. We had set up some of those things. We set up the direct book an appointment through Calendly and all that, which I'm a big advocate for that as well. But definitely asking people whether.
So we've got Calendly up on the Frickin' Tech sites, and it is another API call that's slowing the site down, pissing me off.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Go through and start looking at all the different things because plugins and they start adding up. And they do update.
Yeah, they do.
Where they were doing now they're doing 5. Yep.
Yeah, in our world, boy, that's been an issue for the website providers for a long, long time. Having worked for a couple of them over the years, I remember when we started, and all credit to Mike DeVito at DealerOn. I remember he started using webpagetest.org religiously, and I don't know if Google was using it to power PageSpeed Insights at the time or not, but I started using it heavily in sales and business development. Because you could literally show somebody, well, here's when, and I won't name any vendors, but here's when this starts to load on your site and why it's actually causing such a delay, because some people's code happens to be a little junk or heavy. And it was very interesting to see, some of the vendors that are like, this is a great service. Yeah, but it's costing you 3 seconds of load time on the site. So then it's, well, is the juice worth the squeeze? But we could do a whole episode on website providers. Like, how come no one's ever held them accountable for better than a 2% a conversion rate after nearly 30 years? It's your only job. But
that's a good point.
Well,
do you have any case?
I mean,
do you have any case studies or anything with Hired Guns? Any businesses that where you were able to step in and implement everything that you're doing and just seen amazing results?
We haven't built an official case study on it yet, but I can share some statistics, or I can share some examples I think might be of interest to people. If you were to go to Google right now and you were to type in automotive BDC, you likely are going to see that the first organic listing is Strawlid, which is the first company. I've known their CEO, Vinny, for years, goes back into my Reach Local days. So probably mid 2000s, 06, 7 maybe. Anyway, that, if you're selling outsourced BDC services, that's a niche of our market. And when Vinny first reached out to me around marketing of Strawlid, I didn't have a lot of great ideas because that's a very difficult target to figure out. And from an organic perspective, it was a big challenge because there was no domain authority. There was just a lot to work through. So we started to capture the subject matter expertise just this same way: video, audio, record. Of course, everyone's prepared. We already know what we're going to talk about, but we started to tie that to keywords that were the most lucrative. And I talk so much, so hopefully people will be able to track the SEO value of doing these things. While you almost in anything SEO, you never guarantee or promise to people. But if you're deeply niched, you probably don't have more than 20 or 25 keywords that you even should spend much time on that are lucrative to you, right? That actually produce the best results. In some cases, you don't even have 25 keywords that I would, and I have a fair amount of experience in all things search, both paid and organic. And if you're working with an agency that, well, we're going to continue to feed the Google machine, they'll want to chase as many keywords as you'll let them. But you'll find out that the more deeper research you do, that none of those things actually pay off. So first it was a little bit of keyword research on what's most valuable to them. Automotive BDC was like the runaway winner. Like, we got to get on the page for that. So we started to not just capture content, but we started to actually then do written content that would then inspire Vinny to even write more content that then got handed off to their SEO team that was writing content for their website. Next thing you know, these interior pages about the cost of automotive BDC, training, turnover, all of the pain points that dealers typically feel that leads them to, which are usually all their signals that say they might be actually right in the target as a buyer for us or interested. You pay attention to all of those things and realize that you could actually get a lot of improvement in organic and direct traffic if you basically adopt that part of the strategy. So we started to do that implementation on all of the video content. We started to do even though people will be like, VSEO, that sounds like the, the trendy hot take of years past, and it was kind of BS or whatever. It's not. If you know what you're doing, you absolutely can get thumbnails and all kinds of stuff. Like if another search, for those who are following along, if you type in automotive BDC cost, you'll probably see a whole lot of thumbnails of content that came from episodes and material that we created for Strawlid. And so what happened with them in like just year one, their LinkedIn metrics exploded, 600% growth in reach. When you're starting from almost zero, you're going to have those numbers. So it'd be easy for anybody to say, well, Shaun, like, where did you start from? That's very important. A lot of people, Dennis Galbraith, famously, I took it from him, like, you can torture the data until it confesses. Make it say whatever you want. But in reality, the reach and engagement is specifically comments, people truly engaging with the content for that particular customer for Strawlid in LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. All of it just pretty much went off the charts, and they kind of became the de facto. They're the voice. If what you're looking for and you want more information on outsourced BDC, Strawlid went from, hey, we've got an awesome service, but not a lot of people know who we are. How do we get the word out? All of the methods that I tried for Strawlid before, using a podcast as the capture methodology for subject matter expertise, had unimpressive results. And then we started to capture Vinny's subject matter expertise and establish thought leadership, and it fundamentally changed the game. And almost all those categories, like reach, it was 450% growth, engagement, just off the charts. Where previously there was almost no engagement, unless maybe it was employees, which you should do that, get your employees to at least start, but also make sure that the content you're making is what your audience actually wants. And that was the sweet spot. Vinny started putting content out there, and that's exactly what people interested in that topic wanted to hear.
I just did some of the searches, and yeah, it's dominating.
Yeah. That becomes one of the things where when we engage with clients, we tell them about that. We want them to know that it's important, but we don't, we, like anybody talking about SEO, we don't promise that. We just say that is one of the strategies, and that's one of the tactics that that we know about, we know how to do it, that we want a potential client to know. We're going to chase that for you. We're going to figure out, like, what are your most valuable keywords that maybe you're not really doing too well for. And we're also going to tell them that the written assets that we create from each of these episodes also include content that will help you in terms of building new page content for your own website. So much like when dealers started to build better vehicle research pages, right? And it started to help them from, not just a local SEO perspective, but really the things that get into like the used car strategy that I think I don't know if cars.com was first or Car Gurus, but they started to do some things in their SEO strategy within the H1 or H2, I think was really the bigger place, that they were seeing massive success and just dominating search results. Elements of those things are always in play. But when you're a very deeply niched business, there are some things that become much more specific around the targets you're chasing, because your audience isn't millions, it's maybe 10,000. But it's doable. So we always let people know we can likely help you there, but we don't promise it. So we don't put a price tag on, hey, the SEO component is, because if we could guarantee it every single time, I guarantee you we'd be charging thousands of dollars, because it's very difficult. I mean, we've had episodes where we've literally and I used to love these old stories, but I should say about a week ago, we had posted content, and in less than 24 hours, there was a thumbnail of the video content that we had posted that come up in search results. So that can happen if it's not a particularly popular keyword to millions of people, but deep in your niche, it's not difficult to understand that becomes really valuable if that's the playground that you're on.
Well, Shaun,
Yeah, I can see that.
You make a hell of a case here. Definitely got me rethinking some stuff. So
dealers are, and I've said this for the last several years, car dealers are addicted to leads. It's all of our faults. All of us veterans that have been in it forever. We started hawking leads people through fax machines before even 50% of the dealer world even had websites, way back in the days, late 90s, or even early 2000s. But the last 5 to 7 years of my life, that's really focused me much more on B2B marketing. A lot of the companies that sell products and services to dealers they're no different. They also just live off, I want more leads. And if there's one thing that I would want people to take away, especially if they're a service provider or a vendor, is if you don't know what your customer acquisition cost is, like how much it costs you to acquire one customer, and then you don't know what the payback period is for that one customer, which in our industry is probably average of 24 months. And yet the investment, instead of, hey, let's put a little bit of our budget into a really smart subject matter expertise driven content strategy, no, let's hire more inside salespeople or more outside salespeople or more salespeople for the territory, all of whom are going to struggle because the market's so difficult. They're all going to struggle to sell enough quota, monthly recurring revenue, even in their first 90 days to justify the job that they took. My point being, a lot of companies need to think twice about whether or not they need to invest more in their sales department for go to market versus their marketing department. And that means that if you talk to somebody that knows, well, here's some of the cuts you could make, maybe in both of those places, but then to align them, there's still a lot of misalignment within marketing and sales. And often it's because there's too heavy of an investment on one side or the other. And in the last 15 years, we have so segmented both of those departments where I think we have too many sales specialist roles, too many marketing specialist roles. Do we really need a brand marketer, a product marketer, an event marketer, a content marketer, a digital marketer? So it gets to be a little nonsensical very quickly, and then you're in the exact same place where you've always been, which could be very frustrated because you have a great service or a great product and just not enough people know. Well, that's because all you're doing is outbound, hardcore, let's go procure a list of people out of Zoom info. Let's go use hunter.io and get a bunch of email addresses, and let's just spam the living shit out of people. Or let's expect that everybody that comes to the trade show booth that you paid $100 to basically bribe them into a demo that they actually had high intent, and then they don't. And then you're like, well, how many scans did we have at the booth? And you're like, well, let's calculate that back to how many deals we did. And then you realize, oh my goodness, let's not tell the CFO what the numbers are on that. And yet again, those same companies are not actually making content that showcases their thought leadership, which could be a really big unlock and easy thing to add. So, I mean, it can be very myopic, but it really has a bigger effect than just, hey, should we do a podcast or should we do video interviews and turn it into marketing content? The answer to that, I think, is easy, but big effect.
Well, if someone wants to jump on board with that, which gives your credentials or your points of contact, website, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I would certainly. I appreciate you guys making that an opportunity. The website is hiredgunsagency.com. You can go there. We just very recently in the last few weeks, because we spent so much time kind of like getting ourselves to like, this is where we want to be. People will probably notice that I personally am putting a lot more content into LinkedIn because we're now ready for this. But the site is hiredgunsagency.com. There's no hyphens, no spaces, just hiredgunsagency.com. There you can find on one of the pages where you can book time. So my Calendly is there. If people just want to have a call, set up 15 or 30 minutes and just have questions. Love talking to people. That's been happening a lot in the last couple of weeks, or just people like, what are you doing? Because I have found that a lot of people don't realize that I'm actually not doing dealership marketing. I'm actually trying to help all the companies that sell their stuff to dealers. And surprisingly, a lot of people are like, we had no idea even what you're doing now. Like, oh, that's interesting. So feel free to book some time. Just go to hiredgunsagency.com and go to the, I think the YS page, and you'll find the place where it says book a call or schedule a call. That's probably the best. Cool. You can also give me a Shaun, SHAUN at hiredgunsagency.com. That's the direct email address.
How'd you get a hold of that URL?
Well, many people have asked me, how did I get Dealer Superhero?
That's true.
Way back in the day when all of us were much younger and sexier, I bought dealeradvisor.com. That was kind of one of my first little companies.
I remember that.
And remember I had the stick figure with the superhero cape. That was the early inspiration for, somebody bought Dealer Advisor from me for $8,000 many, many moons ago. And then I don't think I ever even used it. I won't tell you who, because if you don't know who they are, you'll definitely know who they're related to. But the day that I sold it, I was like, I wonder if dealersuperhero.com is available. So I bought dealersuperhero.com. And then I love Tombstone. I love Westerns, period. But if Tombstone's on, it doesn't even matter if it's just a TV version. I can't get enough of Tombstone, and I especially love Val Kilmer, Doc Holliday. It's so good. That was the inspiration for like Hired Guns. So gotcha. It's not anything other than I just love kind of the Westerns and the idea of, hey, a business would hire Wyatt and his brothers to come and like, let's get things right in your town. So
yeah, I need to go back and watch that, and that's a classic.
Yeah, very good.
Shaun, definitely a pleasure. It's great catching up with you. I know we spoke
Yeah.
earlier this week, but it definitely had been way too long.
Yeah, the time flies with both of you guys because we don't stay in contact enough. But I'm really thanks for having me on the show. Very much appreciate your brand. Like I was telling you the other day, Jeff, there are very valuable legacy brands in our industry that I think are really important and have, the way you guys have made your choices around, media distribution and the types of things that you want to get into. I think there are points of differentiation in that are really important. So just glad you guys keep on keeping on. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks for your kind words.